have a bit of an interesting structure. I'm going to speak for a few minutes on what we're calling the vision of the Encyclopedia of Mormon Arts. And then Sharon's going to come and talk about some practical ways to consume it and experience it and the vision of that as well. And then I'm going to get into the really exciting part of the very practical aspects of building yourself a wiki page or a wiki entry on the site. One of the values or one of the visions of the way we've done this is that it's going to be primarily driven by user contributions. So anybody can contribute and create entries on their favorite artists that are related to obviously being Mormon or doing something about the Mormon arts. So I'm going to go ahead and begin. I want to start a little bit with a story of this woman whose name is Lili Tian. You may not have heard of her, but she is a woman Mormon composer. She is from China, and she is obviously very well studied, a lot of accolades, and also was a convert to the church. Now, what's interesting about Lili is if you go and Google her, you get something relative. So if you go in and put in her name on Google, and you put in, you grab her information, you go to her wiki, it's very, very basic, as you can see. It's just a paragraph of where she's come from and a couple of things. The vision that we have is Mormon composers like this have a much bigger presence, especially in terms of what they've done and what they've accomplished, for us to not only be able to learn about them, but be able to sample some of their works. And so the vision here, so this is now this is a screenshot of the Mormon art, the Encyclopedia of Mormon Arts, where you see a lot more content, a lot more images, a lot more stories, and a lot more access to their works, including stories about maybe how they converted into Mormonism. In this case, Lili says that I met the missionaries on the way home right after I prayed to God for more messages. And she actually has a couple funny stories around that, as she went and prayed, and 30 minutes later the missionaries showed up and she told God that was really quick. But anyways, it's really fascinating to take these Mormon composers who, like this woman from China who converted and now has a better stage, a better platform that we can learn about. And that ultimately is the vision of what we're trying to do with the Encyclopedia of Mormon Arts. So a couple of things to know about the wiki itself and the encyclopedia is that right now today we've primarily been focused on Mormon composers. And the whole idea, like I was mentioning with Lili, is that it's about really developing a lot of rich content in a wiki format for people to come and consume. And the most important part, as I mentioned before, we're doing it in this wiki format so that others can contribute. And they can create an account, as I'll show later, and create a page on, again, maybe one of their favorite artists, not just in the arts of music or a composer, but across various topics, various subjects in the arts. And so you can see here, the vision is ultimately not just to be doing Mormon music, Mormon composers, but it's to go into film, and it's going to literature, theater, visual arts, dance, and there's many more. And the whole vision is that the Encyclopedia of Mormon Arts would have entries and categories across all the various aspects of what is Mormon arts. And so we're really thrilled about it. I'm going to be showing a little bit, later I'm going to be going into the wiki, and I'm going to be able to show you how you actually create entries, so that today, if you feel the vision of what we're trying to do, that you can go home today, create a list of people that you believe we need to know more about, that maybe are from the 1800s that no one knows about, and you go to Google and find that there's no entry, or in this case, very little written about that person. And the whole idea is to get them onto the web, onto the wiki, so that more people can enjoy their works. There's a second project that we're not talking about today, but it's going on in parallel, which is the idea of the the catalog of the Mormon arts so that people can use this wiki and search within a catalog to find, if you're a composer, find all the different works associated with a particular subject. And so not only we are going to be able to consume it better, but we're going to find artists able to both consume it and collaborate it in a way that, again, just enriches collaboration, enriches the experience of the Mormon arts. And so that's the vision. Obviously, we're just very much in the beginning. We have just under 100 entries, and I'll go and show you guys a little bit later of what that is. And ultimately, we want to scale to be thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of entries across all the different works. And the only way that this works is that if we have this group of people that are passionate to do user contribution. If we had just every person in this room do one entry, or one person in this conference, a festival, do one entry, we would really start to scale. And people would read it and say, wow, there's a lot of great artists, but we're missing this one or this one. And hopefully it'll have the spirit to it to really give these Mormon artists the profile and exposure that they really deserve. And so ultimately, that is the vision. And with that said, I am going to turn it over to Sharon.
We're ready here? Great. Thank you, Brian. This is exciting. I think this is going to be a really exciting and long-term project, and something that we can come back to for the center and how it's working. I wanted to talk a little bit about discovering it. So let's do some hands-on for a minute, if you don't mind. If you're game, pull out your phone and let's go to MormonArtsEncyclopedia.org. Okay, pull it up, see what you find, and when you get there, we'll just do a little bit of scavenger hunting and see if you can find some stuff. The first one is actually one of the harder ones. Here's a question. How many living composers have been counted by the Mormon Arts Center? And this is a tricky one to search with a keyword or whatever, but if you're kind of stumbling around the site and you come across something, here's a question to think about. I'll go ahead and just kind of give it to you on this one, but you can keep searching for the next ones. There were 1,209 at the last official count. That number's grown since. This grows out of Glenn Nelson's research. He's done extensive research trying to find Mormon composers and make a catalog of them and their work. It's really a tremendous undertaking, and we're so glad that we've got his work to start building the catalog and the encyclopedia. So let's get into a couple other details. Well, first of all, this is where you find that. This is the page where you find that information. So when you go to the home page and it says who or what is a Mormon composer, there's an introductory article here, and you can see by the numbers, this is where we're getting this information. So there's just some fun things. If you spend some time to start digging, that you'll find some fun things in the encyclopedia. Here's a couple other examples. Which Mormon composer has been nominated for a Grammy? If you've been paying attention at the festival, you might know this one. Does anybody know? Does anybody find it? Yeah. Lee Harline, well, definitely Academy Award. Did he do Grammy too?
No Academy Award. Sorry.
Right. Oh, that's good. That's good. We've got too many famous people. It's hard to keep track. Right? Can you find it? If you search a Grammy in there, we get two composers who come up. One is, there's another one. Here's another one if you want to search for another one. Ernest Bloch and Arnold Schoenberg. These are two of the most famous composers from the early 20th century. Schoenberg was the leader of the second Viennese school. The first was Haydn and Mozart, etc. Schoenberg and Webern and Berg were the top of the top. And so we've got somebody here who studied with Schoenberg. Okay, so who's been nominated for a Grammy? Has anybody found it yet? Steven Anderson, you got it, right. And he and his group, the Dominican Jazz Project, played a concert yesterday afternoon for us. If you missed it, it'll be on YouTube. It's a nice thing about anything you might have missed, you can catch it. And then anybody find who studied with Ernst Bloch and Arnold Schoenberg? Lieber Robertson. And you'll find that he's got a number of hymns in the hymnal. So when you sing, if you're a member of the church and you're singing at sacrament meeting or something like that, you come across Lieber Robertson, you can think of him doing atonal work with Arnold Schoenberg. Great. Here's another question. Which composer collaborated on a hymn with former General Relief Society President Linda K. Burton? Now, I'll tell you up front, this is a bit of a trick question, because you're not going to find it on there. And the reason you're not going to find it is because this entry hasn't been created yet. And that's because it is an entry that needs to be created. So I want to take that as an entree into discovering at home what we need, what you and what we hope others will add to the encyclopedia. Here are just some questions to think about. Does anybody in your ward write music? If you're LDS, right? I've got a member here, and there's lots of composers in our current congregation. Does anybody in your family write music? Any of your friends, or anybody in your family history, right? Do you know anyone who wants to submit an entry for the new LDS hymnal? They announced just about 12 days ago that they want new submissions for the hymnal. And so if you know somebody who's inspired or interested in that, then this is somebody who might be a good fit for the encyclopedia. Okay, so let's get into what this could look like. A friend and ward member of mine, David Kerr, I just found out that his grandmother, Marjorie Castleton Kerr, 90 years old, she majored in music at the University of Utah. She's classically trained in piano, is a very talented accompanist. She was especially good at improvising, transposing. She could do anything with her classical training, but also with her ear in helping accompany church works all of her life. You know, possibly, one of her works. So I'll play it here and see if you can recognize it. When the first line starts, it'll be a big clue. Okay, we've got a winner back. If you know the primary song, Where Love Is, that's by Marjorie Castleton Kerr. Okay? Okay. So here's somebody who has this kind of history, and as I talked to David, her grandson, he said, she was really talented in many respects. Just when she was born, at the time she was born, and the expectation that a woman wouldn't necessarily go pursue a musical career as much. She might have been a victim of her time. He says if she'd born at a different time, she may have done more and had a bigger career musically than she did. But taught the lessons, and so she should be in the Encyclopedia of Mormon Arts. Here's a question. What else would you, this is just to help you think about what kinds of things you'd like to have in there. What else would you like to know about her? If you came to an entry, you could find this information. If there's anything that you want to know, we can take it back. And the great thing about this is she's still alive, right? We can still ask these questions. We can still find this information. What would you want to know? Anybody?
Where she got her inspiration.
Sure. What got her into music in the first place? Where she got her inspiration? Maybe if there's a story behind Where Love Is. Any of the other ones? I think I'd want a picture, right? So these are just things to keep in mind, and none of this is big. It doesn't have to be a big, long project, but just things to keep in mind that we can add to it. this upcoming year to be a year for Mormon music. We've got the launch of the Encyclopedia of Mormon Arts, beginning with music, and as Brian talked about, we want to expand to a lot of other arts, but we're starting with this one. We've got a launch of the catalog of Mormon music that will be underway, forthcoming. And just as a heads up, 50,000 pieces already have been collected by Glenn. Okay, so we've got a lot of work to work with, and we definitely have plenty that's missing. For example, with Marjorie Castleton Care, there's a stack of music that hasn't been entered, right? And here it's sitting in family history piles somewhere. And what happens, well, what happens when somebody passes away and the family doesn't know what to do with it? A lot of times libraries say, well, we don't really have room. We've got the Mormon Arts Center, right? So be in touch if that's your situation, and hang on to the work and let's get it saved. Also this year we've got the Carnegie Hall concert that happened last night with Scott Holden, and massive interest in suggestions and submissions for the new hymnal. I've seen so many people say, I'm going to submit all 5, and I'm going to find other people to submit the other ones that don't fit in my 5. And I just want to reiterate, this is a great opportunity to capture your family, your friends, your family history while it's fresh. Put it up in a wiki-friendly format. Brian's going to show us how that's done. And this is how we'll really make a statement and a long-lasting archive of Mormon arts.
All right. Well, thank you, Sharon. You know, one of the things we joke about, or half joke about, I guess I should say, in the Encyclopedia Committee is it's a bit of a spirit of Elijah for the arts that happens. You know, you learn about these great artists that have come before us, and you realize they don't have much out there that's been published, or their works are you know, with the family somewhere, and they're not exposed, and we're unable to consume them. And so this work is somewhat similar to the work of Elijah. So really exciting to be a part of this. Now I'm going to get a little bit practical in terms of how you can actually contribute, because sometimes that's there's a little bit of inertia. We, like anything, we get excited about it and we want to participate, but we don't know exactly how to do it. So I'm going to take you through just a couple of steps that will really hopefully help you in your journey. So I'm going to be toggling back and forth between a little bit of instruction. So I'm going to keep it like this, a little bit of instruction, and then also showing you how you actually go in and create something. So first and foremost, let me come to the encyclopedia. If you come in here, the first thing is to actually come in and create an account. And the power of creating an account is 2 things. Number one is that it will expose you to certain things like certain tools like the ability to upload a file, which are important for when you're uploading documents or images. And then the second is, as you create entries logged in, you're going to get credit for said entries. So really important that you come in and create an account, and then also in the future we'll have some security around this. So in order to create an entry, you're going to have to log in. So the first thing is when you want to create a new entry, you come over here and you search for it. And the reason why it's important that sorry, I'm a Mac guy and I'm all over the place on this keyboard. Let's see. So if I search for Lee Harline, who I mentioned before, and I want to write about him, you can see he already exists. So you have a couple of options. You can move on to the next person because you discovered they exist, or you can actually go to Lee Harline's entry and add to it. Now in this case, I am going to pretend that that hasn't been created. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to say create the page. So again, if you came and you put in an artist and they're not there, you can click this link and it'll begin to create the page. So now it goes to a blank page. So now this was all pretty simple, but then you come to, for a lot of people, a little bit overwhelming because you're actually having to write some syntax, a little bit of WYSIWYG code to be able to produce the end result, to produce the entry. So I'm going to show you a couple of things to get you started. So number one is before you actually go into the entry and start creating the entry, it's nice to create an outline of the things that you want to talk about. And what you can see here on the left is a high-level outline. And again, you can always go to other entries and see how people are structuring them. But in this case, there's a section on Lee's life, and then his music, and then of course a section for references. Now, what's interesting is if I go in and put this in like this, you see these equal signs, one set of equal signs, and then two set of equal signs, Wiki knows that it's going to start to create an outline for you. And so if I simply take this right here, and again, you can see this throughout the site. So anytime you're stuck and you're trying to say, how do I create a page like this? You can always go in and click the edit button and you can see how somebody created that page. So you can copy and paste and follow along. So here, I'm just going to copy this. Oh, geez. Okay, that's not it. Hold on. Struggling with the whole PC thing. Control copy. Okay, so if I just do that, and I save, you can already see now, with just a little syntax, it's created that nice contents page with links to each of the sections. So right away, it's ready for you to start filling out. I can even come into Life and open this up and go ahead and put under Life, I can come in and I already have some content, and I'm going to take this stuff under his early years, and I can throw it in right under that, and then we see what that gets us. So again, now you're starting to see this take shape, and it's starting to really look like a wiki page that you would find on Wikipedia. It just happens to be in our Encyclopedia of Mormon Arts. So the other tip, if I could continue here, is about adding images, which we find really important. Obviously, we don't just want a bunch of content and text. Adding images is very helpful. And so a couple of steps to add an image. Again, you have to be signed into your account to be able to get this part of the tool. But if you go to the left navigation over here, you see Upload File. And you simply click on Upload File, and you're able to, just like any other experience, come in and choose a file and upload a file. Now, what's important then is once you've uploaded the file, that you grab that you create a little bit of syntax around the file image, as well as the caption that you want underneath. So in this particular case, what I have over here is the exact syntax that you need for a picture to show up to the right of all the text with a small caption underneath the image. And again, it's really easy to go in and look at previous entries to see what did they write for this particular image or caption, and you can kind of copy that. So if I copy that, and again, this image is already uploaded, so I've already done that step. If I go into the edit mode, I like to put the first image above everything, and it will justify right. You'll see here in a minute. So now I've added that, so you can see the file name is the image that I upload. This is the particular type of image is called a frame image. Then after this is the name of the image, and then underneath the caption underneath. So all of this captures everything that I want to be able to show up into the image. So if I publish this, looks something like that. Again, it's starting to take shape of the entry the kind of entry that we want. And again, like I was saying, the particular parameters and syntax that I added to the file, then it enables to show up this caption underneath. So here, Lee Harline, American, and the dates he was living. So hopefully that makes sense. There's a couple of other things that I would like to show that are really important. References. So creating references is also really important. So as we're pulling works and images and content from other sites, it's really important that we create references for these. And so it's very simple. Anything that you're referencing, all you do is create this tag here. It's a reference tag, and then a closing reference tag. And again, sometimes this feels a little bit overwhelming, but the reality is you can always go into any other entry that we've created and look for how they created a reference and look at it. And again, once you've done it once, it's pretty exciting. It almost feels like you're coding, and you just want to keep going. So again, there's a little bit of inertia to start, but all of this here is to help you. And so if you come in, I'm gonna bring in a reference for Lee here. I think it's down here somewhere. Okay, there it is right here. So he had it in one of the sections here. So I'm going to add this back here. And we'll add it towards the end. And for purposes of this discussion, I'm not going to fill out everything here, but you can see how this works. You go under each section and you put the right content under each section. Now, one thing I'll show you is once I add those reference tags and save it, and go down to the reference section, there it is. So with just clicking this link, it'll take you to where the reference is. Okay, so again, really important as we're documenting and creating entries for these artists that we're creating these references. And again, all it is putting simple reference tags on them, and then it'll show up at the bottom of the wiki. And so you can start to see how this really starts to, the one thing that's really nice about the wiki format is that if you're using the right tags, the right syntax, as you're creating this, it knows exactly how it needs to perform and how it needs to show up. So by simply adding these two things to start, and it knows you have a reference section, which I created in the beginning, it throws it right underneath the references. So again, there's a bit of a learning curve to start, but once you figure out some of the basics, and again, you can always reference other entries, it starts to become a great tool and very scalable. Just a couple other things to wrap up. There are also these things called external links. And what it becomes very cluttered in an entry is if you have a bunch of links where it has the full URL. And so we have a really slick way, again, within the wiki format, of being able to take something like the title of the work, which in this case, it's Man's Search for Happiness, and you're able to just have that title with this logo or this icon right here that denotes that it's going to be an external link and you're going to be leaving the wiki to go to the site. And so if I add this, I'll just show you what this looks like. So I'll come in here under external links. I'll add this and save it. And you can see the changes. So again, just a very clean link that says Man's Search for Happiness. You click on it and it goes to the source. So again, these are, if I think about what are the major elements, these are those. And then at the end, a couple of things that are really important that people sometimes forget is just in the end, including this thing, this tag references at the bottom, as well as categories. So if I go back to the reason why adding this at the bottom, so being able to say which category it belongs to. So in this case, we've been creating a lot around Mormon composers. If you put this in there, what will happen is when I go back to the home page, and I go down to the section of Mormon composers, and again, here you're going to see all of the entries that have been done to date. Again, we're just in the very, very beginning. We've only done just under 100. But once you put that little link that says category Mormon composers, it then flows really nicely into this section in the Wikipedia or in the encyclopedia. So here you can see, because I put that tag, you're going to be able to see Lee Harline right there. And then you go here and this is his entry. Now again, we did a test of this entry, so we created a new one, but this is what Lee's looks like. Again, a lot of really good content, not just about his art and what he created, but also the stories behind. Now, in this case, Lee Harline was somebody that did win Academy Awards. He wrote and composed all of the music for Pinocchio. And he worked, as you can see in this image, with a young Walt Disney. So there's Lee sitting right next to Walt Disney, creating and composing the music for what would be one of the Disney classics. And again, just to kind of recap what has been said here is that they're incredible Mormon artists, whether they're Mormon composers, whether they're painters, whether they're dancers, that we want to be more discoverable, that we want to learn about. And like I said before, a little bit of the spirit of Elijah for the arts as we continue to embark on this. But again, this is the example of Lee Harline's, and even Lee Harline, who has done quite a bit of work. If you go to the Wikipedia page, you'll find not nearly as much content as we have here. And so again, we're taking the opportunity, we're not competing, but we want to say if you're looking for Mormon artists, this is the place to come. Not only to learn about these Mormon artists, but also to be able to figure out ways to collaborate with those that are living or to collaborate with the works that have already been done by those who have passed. So again, hopefully you've been able to catch the spirit of what Sharon and team and I have been focusing on. We still have a lot of work, and really one of the biggest purposes of having this discussion today is, number one, to hear the vision of what we're trying to do, where we're at today and how you can consume it, and third, and most importantly, how you can contribute. So if each one of you, the invitation is if each one of you today could go home or when you have spare time, and maybe it's one of the artists that you meet here today, and you can go to the wiki and you can find out, are they represented on this encyclopedia? And if they're not, add them to it and learn what it's like to create an entry and learn what it's like to participate. And what you'll find is, number one, it's easy, and number two, it's going to be hugely beneficial for this initiative that we're working on. And so just want to thank all of you, thank Sharon, thank the rest of the committee for really supporting us in this. So thank you.
Is there any gatekeeping aspect? I often run into the sort of phenotype in students who want to create a platform before they've written anything or
That's right.
forwarding.
We've even kind of joked about a mother who had their 5-year-old daughter creates a piece of art and they're like, this should be an encyclopedia, right?
Exactly.
So do you want to share your thoughts? I'll share mine.
Sure, that's a great question. What we've tried to do so far is seed it with quality content so that there is sort of a standard already visible and available there. And I think we will have to part of it is technical, part of it is curated. And so there's the curation part, and then there's also the technical part where we've got to be careful about bots and who gets to actually sign up for an account, and those are things that we'll be working out the details of. It's, I guess what I have, the main thing is we're trying to set a precedent, and if we find that that gets abused, then we'll have to redo the way that we've got the accounts to set up and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and just to build on that, there's really kind of two layers of gating. Number one, the community itself. So as we develop more and more of a community, and people are using and contributing and consuming the site, when they see something that's wrong, they have the ability to go in and do it. But we also are talking about, as a committee, as a broader Mormon arts, advisory and the bigger kind of constitution of the Mormon Arts Centers, how do we create, if needed, a group of people that will constantly curate and edit and make sure that everything's going well. We actually, very early on, our site was hacked, and we had to then, we realized we need to build a firewall, and we need to build, some stuff to fight malware. And so we're very much learning, but I think this is going to be a huge thing. And I think the only thing is we want to balance the curation and censorship. That's where there's going to be some judgment that comes in, where, if we open it up to everyone, or is there going to be something that we might deem inappropriate, but we also, this is a place that we feel like is going to be less censorship. And so there's this balance that we're going to discover as we go down the path. But I would just say we're early on the journey, but we're talking a lot as a committee, probably more than anything. Yeah.
Hi, so I'm from the Lee Library, Brigham Young, and in the area of visual arts, but I also work with the music people. And the library is actually working on a Mormon arts database, has been for a few years. And I just wonder, do you envision this as maybe collaborating with people that have done a lot of that work to fill this out really fast?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say let's connect. And Glenn has told us about some of these initiatives that he's heard about, and I think the idea is we wanted to at least set the vision and the platform, and then see what happens. And if there's people that have already done a lot of work and are interested in this team of curators, and that feel a lot of pride in making sure that we're building something of value and integrity, the more the merrier. So we should definitely talk.
Right, and just also in that, looking at the database from Lee Library so far, it doesn't have as much on music yet. So part of it is we can work on this spot, and I think it actually is a good opportunity to see how the different arts could blend with these two projects. Yeah.
I just had a question about who would go in here. I was a little surprised when it showed up, your term was Mormon composers, because today, for example, throughout this festival, we've been talking a lot about maybe composers who contribute to Mormon arts. Maybe they were Mormon, maybe they not currently aren't.
That's right.
How do you juggle that sort of thing, or how do you envision juggling that?
Well, I would say, it's like anything that's new. When we go out of the gate, we're going to be wrong, but we need to start. And so our starting point was we had a database of over 1,000 Mormon composers. What we might find is we do need to change the name, because the whole idea about Mormon Arts Center is that it's art produced by Mormons, for Mormons, about Mormons. And so we'll need to figure out what is the hierarchy, what's the categories, what's the naming conventions of these things to make sure that's inclusive. But for us, just starting and like we had a list of 1,000 Mormon composers, it naturally became it's Mormon composers. But your point is well taken, and something we need to figure out sooner rather than later, so we don't have an issue of we have to go into 1,000 entries and change the category tag.
Yeah.
And I think the inclination is for now to be rather generous with the category. And that introductory article that was on one of my slides farther down talks about how we're not interested in making a judgment call whether or not somebody is still practicing Mormon, or that's outside of the purview of the encyclopedia. But if they're affiliated and associated with Mormonism and music, then that's a good fit for now.
Is there a possibility just for self-identification?
artists get to self-identify.
Right.
Do I contribute to Mormon arts, whether or not I'm
Right.
wherever I am on the spectrum
Mhm.
of Mormonosity? How do I self-identify? There's something about, I don't want to identify, label, but that artist has the right to.
Yeah, and Wikipedia is actually kind of strict on being able to create your own. We want to kind of open that up a little bit more. So if you self-identify, we, at least especially as a committee, don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, our mission and vision for all of this is about exposing amazing artists. And if it's by way of self-identification, I mean, great. It would be hard for me to write my own thing, but that's just me, but I don't have a lot to write about. But, others do. So I think that would be, that's absolutely fine.
If the person is still living, is there some sort of process of permission that needs to be given?
That's a good question. If the person's still living, do we need the permission to put it out there? My inclination is that the things that are readily available on the web are already on the web, and I think it's courteous, for sure, to try and get the permission.
Yeah, and you can also show up as references too. If you
Right.
grab stuff off of a site to show the references, but in terms of the works.
Right. And this, one thing that's kind of unique about this is, contrary to Wikipedia itself, this isn't just secondary sources, right? This is also primary sources in some cases. So absolutely, if you are posting about somebody living and you're getting, personal interviews or things like that, you would want to secure permission. Yeah.
And again, something that we're going to learn by doing and seeing where did we cross the line, where are we overdoing it. But yeah.
Tell me about ownership of this. I'm assuming from what you've said that this is entirely run by the Mormon Arts Center, and is it their efforts here?
Yeah,
So it's not owned by BYU, it's not owned by the church at all.
it's not.
Is there, how are you going to make sure that there's a continuity, a long-term thing? I guess it's, as
Yeah.
long as the festival, as long as the Mormon Arts Center is running, this will keep going.
That's right.
Is that the idea?
That's absolutely the idea. And I think the important thing, and it's really the important thing for the whole Mormon Arts Center, Festival, Encyclopedia, that's really important to maintain, is that it's important for us to be a separate entity from them so that we have a little bit more leeway in terms of what we can say is Mormon art and what, again, what is done by Mormon art, whether they're Mormon artists, whether they're active, whether they're not, where it's a little bit, so it's really important for us to delineate. In terms of ownership, I mean, the way we look at it is we absolutely have the level of ownership in terms of facilitating and creating the infrastructure and the vision, but in some respects, the way that we've always thought about it is it's really owned by its patrons, by those that believe in what we believe in, and so, but again, it's an area that we'll need to continue to learn, especially as we go from 100 entries to 1 million entries.
I just want to also comment, one of the advantages that I think that this effort has compared to the Lee Library's database, for example, is that anybody can get in there and edit it and
That's right.
do it. And the problem that the Lee Library's database has is, you have to send off the information by email to them, and it takes
Or be conventional,
it takes forever.
Yeah.
And I know you have limited staff and everything. I'm not trying to get on your case, but it takes too long.
Yeah.
Well, this database has a crowdsourced option too. So it's
Yeah.
So,
Right, but it's not open as far as I know.
not yet, we're building it.
Yeah, so lots of stuff to come, and I think that's the model. From the very beginning, we debated this wiki format because it is kind of complex. You are opening a level of complexity that will require a staff to manage and all that stuff. But we believe, in terms of like how do we scale, this is the best way to scale. But it also just opens up interesting.
Yeah.
But
It's got the problem of you don't have defined fields. And things
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
So one of the things that's obviously has to happen is you have to have people come in and say, define for, a biographical entry, you have to have this item, this item, this item.
That's right.
Birthday, death date, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and again, like as we were saying before, the biggest thing for us is how do we seed it with entries that feel in the spirit or vein of what we're trying to capture, but there are going to be things that we need to moderate. We are out of time, so if you guys have more questions, feel free to follow up with us directly. We're here all day. But again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the questions and looking forward to the future of this. Thank you.